Music City Bowl. Joey Aguilar, Luke Altmyer, Tennessee, Illinois. Who's going to win? We'll talk about it right here on a crossover edition of the Locked On Podcast Network.
You are Locked On College Crossover, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What is up, everybody? Welcome into it, a Locked On crossover here the day after Christmas. Hope you and yours had a fantastic, awesome, wonderful Christmas. Of course, we're wishing you guys a happy Christmas and a happy holiday season right here on Locked On Vols and Locked On Illini. I am Eric Cain, and we are going to be crossing over here today. And let me get my nameplates here. The crossover template's always confusing because nothing is where it needs to be. We got Sunny here, of course, at Locked On Illini, and it's going to be a fun show. We're going to talk about Tennessee's path to the Music City Bowl, Illinois' path to the Music City Bowl. We'll do some predictions. We'll look at what FanDuel has to think about this game later on in the show. The quarterback battle, all that and more. So it should be a pretty good matchup, Sonny. When you look at two teams that have a whole lot of talent, two teams that have identical 8-4 records. You guys 5-4 in conference play. You play that 9th conference game. Tennessee and the SEC will do that next year. Tennessee's 4-4 in the SEC. So two teams that have a whole lot of firepower. Probably wanted better seasons, no doubt, but expecting a really good game in Nashville coming up on Tuesday.
Yeah, I think you kind of phrased that correctly. Both teams had sky-high expectations coming into the year, and I don't know if you had told them that ultimately, your record is 8-4, you're playing at the Music City Bowl. I don't know if you'd be satisfied hearing that in the preseason, but ultimately, you still got two really talented teams. You got two really talented coaching staffs, and you have Illinois and Tennessee meeting for the second time in Nashville within a month. We had the basketball game just a couple of weeks ago, and selfishly speaking, I hope we have a similar result at the Music City Bowl in a couple days.
Yeah, I mean, if you didn't want that result, then I would ponder who should be hosting your podcast there. No, it was, I mean, these two teams squared off on Broadway just a couple weeks ago, and yeah, Tennessee was going through a slide then, man, a young team. This is a football podcast, but, really, really good game, really good opponents, and hopefully that's going to translate over to Nissan Stadium here in the next couple of days. You look at how these two teams got here, all right? We'll get to Tennessee here in just a moment. I want you to speak on Illinois. Started the season off 5-1, the lone loss at the time, the number 19 Indiana, which of course went on to be the number 1 ranked team in the college football playoff. That was a 63-10 loss. You beat USC that was ranked at the time, Western Illinois, Duke, Western Michigan, Purdue. Second half of the season, 3-3, those last 6 games. Wins over Rutgers, Maryland, and Northwestern. Losses to, at the time, number 1 Ohio State, Washington, and Wisconsin. 1-2 against ranked opponents this season. Finished the regular season winning 3 of the last 4 ball games. So really good, strong start. Had a couple of hiccups. Had some nice wins. How would you kind of characterize this regular season for Illinois?
I mean, it depends on who you listen to. If you listen to the fans, it's a relatively big disappointment. But I think a lot of fans were getting caught up in the dreams because, look, I was at Big Ten Media Days in Las Vegas, and Illinois was a very sexy pick for a sleeper college football playoff. Obviously they won 10 games last year. They beat South Carolina in their bowl game, and so they're returning 16 to 17 starters this year. And so people were kind of hoping that the play would elevate them to possibly sneak into a college football playoff. That didn't happen, and I think that dream was essentially over once you lost 63-10 to that monster of a team that Curt Cignetti is building now. I'm not making excuses. I'm just providing context. Illinois didn't have 6 of their top 7 defensive backs in that second half of that game against the Hoosiers. And so if there's anyone who loves to front run, it is the Hoosiers. Like, if they see a weakened animal in front of them, they don't stop. And so that's why that score got out of hand as it did. I was at the Ohio State game myself. It's a game where, Illinois scored more points against Ohio State's defense than any other team in the country this year on their schedule. They were never really threatening Ohio State, but I think it was a admirable effort, I guess you can say. But, Indiana and Ohio State, those are games that you were expected to lose. You were a touchdown dog against USC. You came out with a victory there. The Washington game, I think, was kind of the turning point where a lot of fans kind of, we talk about this being a football show. Illinois, for the most part, is a basketball program, but there was a lot of excitement with the football team until the Washington game happened. Now, I had predicted that one being a loss, but not in the manner that it was. It's just our defense simply didn't show up. The weather was awful. Washington handled business pretty cleanly, and at that point, the interest in the football game, I feel like, started waned, at least according to the feedback I was getting. But the nail in the coffin was that Wisconsin game. It was a game that we were hyping up in the sense, not that Wisconsin's any good. In fact, they're pretty bad. That's clear. But Brett Bielema goes back home, right? And so it's got that storyline with it. And unfortunately, it was a game where right off the bat, Wisconsin was the better team that night. And that's just simply unacceptable. And so that's kind of where we're at now. You know, you beat the teams that you're supposed to beat at the end of the year to reach a level. Your record's 8-4. The over-under was 7.5 for the Illini. So technically, this was a successful season, or basically meet an expectation type of season. But for the fans who are listening to some analysts talking about winning 10, 11 games this year and being in the college football playoff, and the fact that was basically done with early in the year, in that sense, it was a disappointment.
Yeah, it's tough. Whenever you lose, I guess that Indiana game, I'm looking at the schedule right now, that was week 4, or that was game 4. And it's not necessarily a loss. You lose a close game to Indiana, who you knew would go on and be a big player. It just wasn't a close loss. So it was kind of like you said, like really kind of ended any hope of a CFP at that time. And that's week 4. And then it's kind of like, okay, well, not what are you playing for, but like how are you going to get there? And so Tennessee was essentially, we'll kind of go to Tennessee's side right now. Tennessee was put out of the college football playoff conversation November the 1st when it lost to Oklahoma. And so you had the last month of the regular season where it's like, okay, I mean, you need to win these games, but like, you know, unless hell freezes over, you're not making the CFP. So it's kind of like you're kind of in limbo, right? And so I feel like both those teams kind of have those similarities in that respect, playing multiple weeks throughout the season like that. Tennessee, you know, the offseason storyline really last day of spring practice, and we'll talk more about the quarterbacks here in a moment, but of course, Nico Iamaleava leaves Tennessee. Tennessee's without a quarterback. Tennessee's got to find a quarterback. They go and they get from UCLA, actually, by way of Appalachian State for a couple years. Then, of course, junior college, they get Joey Aguilar. And, you know, his mantra coming in was gunslinger, going to make a lot of plays, going to throw a lot of picks. I think he certainly lived up to that category. Again, more on him in a moment. But Tennessee was much better offensively than I think anybody could have possibly imagined early in the season. I mean, you had 17 chances. I kid you not. I mean, it was at least 10 chances defensively to make one stop, and you beat Georgia. You make one field goal in overtime or at the end of the game to beat Georgia, and you know it's over. How different does the season look like that? But still, a lot of people, that was a week 3 game. A lot of people left that Georgia loss saying, "Oh man, Tennessee's got something here. Like Tennessee's offense going to be pretty good. Make a few stops defensively, okay." But that was one loss. Your second loss was on the road at Alabama. Alabama was a better football team than you, no doubt about it. Tennessee lost 37-20. The offense had a pick 6 backbreaker that was a 21 7-point swing or whatever right before the half. I mean, it was awful. And Tennessee lost that game. So you're like, okay, you have no room for error the rest of the way. If you lose one more, you're done. And then they lose that one a couple weeks later to Oklahoma. And then, you know, the final nail in the coffin, I mean, just a horrendous showing against Vanderbilt. And Vanderbilt's a good football team this year. Sure. Don't get me wrong. Vanderbilt's good. Diego Pavia, you know, is a good football player. But you can't convince Tennessee fans it's ever acceptable losing to Vanderbilt ever, especially the way that it happened, 45-24. So, yeah, kind of going back to what you said, like, I think a lot of Tennessee fans are super discouraged. They're super upset because this is a football school, and Tennessee's got a really good basketball team. Tennessee's had a really good baseball team in the spring, and that's awesome. And Tennessee fans go crazy in those sports, don't get me wrong. End of the day, though, this is a football school, and it's all about what you do on the football field. And so I think there's a lot of disappointment. It's been some good offseason moves since. Jim Knowles coming to town. That's going to be big moving forward, but he won't coach in this game on the defensive side of the football. But a very frustrating season, even though if you polled, I would say probably 100 Tennessee fans back in the summer, you said 8-4, 9-3, you know, is that a good year? Oh my gosh, yeah, we'll tell you. We don't have a quarterback right now. Are you kidding me? Let's go. But sure. Expectations changed when you saw what Joey Aguilar was doing, and specifically what you saw him do against Georgia. Let's talk more quarterbacks. That's a little bit about Joey Aguilar. Let's talk about Luke Altmyer, some similarities, some connections maybe, and how this game is going to be played from the quarterback position. That's coming up next as we continue on here. It is a Locked On crossover, Locked On Vols and Locked On Illini. Hey guys, want to tell you about our friends over at FanDuel Sportsbook. NFL Sundays, they move fast, one big play, and suddenly everything feels different. That's what makes live betting with FanDuel so exciting. You're not just watching the game, you're reacting to it in real time. You can place bets on as the action unfolds and every drive, every momentum swing, every highlight moment. Live betting is best when the game starts to shift, okay? A player scores a touchdown, someone comes up with a big turnover, there's a big red zone stop, whatever that momentum swing can be, those lines over at FanDuel Sportsbook, they adjust instantly, right? Money lines, spreads, player props when an individual player gets hot. I watch the Titans every Sunday, and there's not a lot of players that get hot on that football team, so maybe that's a bad example, but Sonny, you're a big Bears fan, right? I mean, holy crap. I mean, that team's on fire right now, like overtime win, Caleb Williams, what he did last week, just phenomenal stuff, and all that and more is so much exciting when you're locked into every single snap, every single play over at FanDuel Sportsbook. So if you want to be right in the middle of the action this football season, visit FanDuel.com and place your NFL bets all season long. FanDuel, the game moves fast, and so can you with FanDuel Sportsbook. It is a Locked On crossover Friday, the day after Christmas. Hope you guys had a Merry Christmas. Locked On Vols, Locked On Illini. I am Eric Cain alongside Sunny Verma, and we are previewing the Music City Bowl between Tennessee and Illinois. So I kind of went into a little bit of the quarterback conversation there. I'll talk more about Joey Aguilar here in a moment, but Sunny, tell us all about Luke Altmyer, a guy that Tennessee's already faced a couple years ago, started his career at Ole Miss. Tell us all about Luke Altmyer and how he protects the football the way he does.
You know, before we even get into that, I think it's fun just to talk about the side story with Luke Altmyer and our two programs. Luke was a guy who was mentioned that maybe could enter the NFL draft last year. And then he made a big announcement at a basketball game that, no, I'm coming back. And then obviously you referenced the Tennessee quarterback drama that you guys went through. And every insider that I reached out to when it comes to the Tennessee was like, Luke is the guy that they've kind of targeted at this point. So I had a week's worth of shows where I'm just talking about, is he leaving? Is he staying? What's going to happen with Luke? And, ultimately he decided to stay, which we're very grateful for. In my opinion, he's the best Illinois quarterback I've seen in my lifetime. It's debatable between one more guy, but he's a guy who, again, probably came in with higher expectations, but that goes along with the team. Unfortunately, I don't think the numbers are quite where they need to be, mainly because the offensive line on this Illinois team has struggled all season long. And because of that, he hasn't been a lot of the times he's running for his life. And he ended up with decent numbers, don't get me wrong, over 2,800 yards, 21 touchdowns to just 5 interceptions. He's the guy who does take care of the ball, and he's one where if the pass isn't there, he can get yards with his legs as well. So he's a big prospect. He's going to be, my guess, maybe a 6th, 7th round pick ultimately in the NFL draft. But we won 8 games this year because Luke Altmyer was our quarterback. There's no other quarterback in the country. A little bit of hyperbole there, but that I would trust with the game on the line than Luke. If the game is winnable and Illinois has the ball last in that Music City Bowl, Eric, I'm going to be honest with you. I think we come away with the victory, and that's just, he's a super clutch. No matter who his wide receiver group is, no matter who, unfortunately, his offensive line is, whether it's good or bad, he still gets the job done. And so, it's interesting to me. I wonder if Luke has this in the back of his mind. Like, did he decide that he was going to play in this bowl game? Because a lot of people, he could opt out if he wanted to. But once it was announced that Tennessee was going to be that final game, I mean, you're talking about his final game of his collegiate career. What a way to write the final chapter of it.
Yeah, you said Illinois has won 8 games because of Luke Altmyer. I mean, that's the same way with Tennessee, right? I mean, Tennessee, and we'll talk defense here in a moment, but Tennessee's defense was, after being so elite, I mean, truly elite, and being the reason Tennessee was a playoff team in 2024, it was anything but in 25. They were very good at takeaways and sacking the quarterback at times, but Tennessee with Joey Aguilar won 8 games because Joey Aguilar on the offense was explosive. It is interesting, man. I mean, Nico left, and Tennessee was in scramble mode, and nobody from Tennessee will ever admit, obviously, that they were targeting this guy or this guy, but that would be tampering, right? And I'm not sitting here saying that's happening, but we all know how things work. They're just like, hey, man, how many transfer portal declarations have you seen in the last 2 weeks, right? I don't know if you knew this. The transfer portal's not open, okay? You know how things work, right? I mean, exactly. There was tons of Luke Altmyer rumors. There was Josh Hoover rumors. I mean, pretty much, I mean, it was like, oh, that guy would fit this system. Oh, there's a connection there. Oh, I mean, Luke Altmyer's pretty simple, right? He came from this league. He played in a similar offense. Like, oh, it's like, oh, that makes a whole lot of sense. So, yeah, that is an interesting little wrinkle to this game and this storyline. So, two quarterbacks that I think are, pretty good and trying to finish off their careers. Joey Aguilar is trying to get another year. We'll see if that happens, but trying to finish off their career on the high note. Joey Aguilar, again, he came in, he got here mid-May. 2 years at junior college, 2 years at Appalachian State, where he threw a ton of touchdowns. He threw a ton of picks. Had a cup of coffee, did spring practice over at UCLA. Nico enters the portal, going to UCLA. Joey Aguilar is like, all right, who's from California, mind you. It's like, all right, well, I'm not going to play here, so let me enter the portal. Let me go to Tennessee. He comes here and, learn the system, got to know his teammates, all that in just a really short amount of time. They had a quarterback competition, and it was a competition, right? But, I mean, it was one of those quarterback competitions where it's like, okay, well, I mean, this guy should win. This guy's going to win. And that was Joey Aguilar, and he won that during fall camp. And I mentioned the Georgia game. I mean, he had around 400 yards passing, 5 total touchdowns. He was phenomenal. Led the SEC in passing yards this year, was tied for 4th in passing touchdowns. Finished the year 24 passing touchdowns, 10 interceptions. He went through kind of a lull period in the month of November where the turnovers really started to rack up a little bit. Oklahoma, he had 2 first-half turnovers. Alabama, he had 2 first-half turnovers. It was New Mexico State. Anyway, it wasn't that good. But overall, man, Joey Aguilar was really good for Tennessee, much better than I think anybody could have imagined. And he brought the explosiveness back to the Tennessee offense where, from afar, you probably are like, oh, the Josh Heupel's at Tennessee. Man, they're putting up a lot of points. Hendon Hooker, Jalen Hyatt, man, they throw it all over the yard. And then, for 2 years, it was Joe Milton and Nico Iamaleava, and there just wasn't there in that offense. This year with Joey Aguilar, it's back to being explosive and throwing it down the field. So I'm intrigued to see these two quarterbacks. Who are they going to throw the football to? There's a very, very good wide receiver that's one of the best wide receivers in Big Ten play for Illinois that's going to play in this game. And the Tennessee's defense that we'll talk defense here in a moment. It's not very good. Going to have to look out for. Who is that guy and what is he good at and what is Tennessee going to have to be mindful of?
One of the strong suits of this Illinois team is that wide receiver room, which is nice to say now in mid-December because coming into the year, that was the biggest question mark. You lost Pat Bryant. You lost Franklin from last year, your top 2 wide receivers. And this year's team was going to be very, very green when it comes to the wide receivers. But you had Hank Beatty, who went off in the Citrus Bowl against South Carolina last year. And he was, I believe, honorable mention or all Big Ten third team. It's slipping my mind right now. 64 catches for 826 yards. And this guy is a do everything. He's thrown for a touchdown this year. He's caught a touchdown this year. He's returned a punt for a touchdown this year. He's just slippery and slidey. And he's just one of those guys who, when he's on your team, you're so grateful that you have him. But when you're watching him or if he's on the opposition, you're screaming, you're pulling your hair. Like, why can't you just he's not fast. It's not like he's super twitchy, but for some reason he's got that body control that the defense just has a hard time getting their hands on him. You have Hudson Clement, who was the big offseason pickup from West Virginia last year. Very slow start to the season, to the point where a lot of people were going to call him a bust. But in the last 6 weeks of the season, he was wide receiver 1 for them. So looking forward to seeing what he's going to look like next year. Colin Dixon was the second leading receiver on this team. Young kid, 33 catches for 538 yards himself. He had 5 touchdowns. Again, with the wide receiver room, Hank Beatty is probably the number 1 guy, but not in the sense where your number 1 guy is 6'4", 220 pounds. Oh, you look at him like that's an NFL player right there. Hank will, I think he's good enough. He does enough skills well where he's going to get an NFL paycheck someday doing something. I don't know what it is, but with Illinois, I think it's one of those where your new defensive coordinator or whoever's going to be coordinating the defense in the Music City Bowl, he's going to have to basically earmark 3, 4, 5 different wide receivers against Illinois and see what they do well, because it's just not one guy that you game plan against.
Yeah, Hank Beatty, he is 3rd in the Big Ten in receptions with 64. He's 5th in receiving yards with 826. He has 3 touchdowns. Certainly a guy that Tennessee is going to have to be very, very mindful of. You look at Tennessee, and again, I mentioned that explosiveness return to the offense. They have 3 receivers who are over 700 yards receiving. That's tough to do, right? One of which, we'll talk more opt-outs here in a moment, Chris Brazzell. He has opted out of this football game, led the SEC in receiving yards, led the SEC in receiving touchdowns. He's opted out of this game, so that's a big win for the Illini. You got Braylon Staley, who is the slot receiver, 806 receiving yards, 6 touchdowns. You have Mike Matthews, who's on the other side, 4 touchdowns, 770 yards. Coming to play in place of Chris Brazzell will be a freshman by the name of Radarius Jackson. Tennessee primarily played 3 receivers this year. I mean, they were always on the field. So the numbers don't look like anything that'll scare you for the freshman Radarius Jackson, 7 receptions, 72 yards. But he's going to be a good player, and this is kind of a spring forward game, if you will, for him into next year. So I like Tennessee wide receivers. Tennessee's tailback, Deshaun Bishop, is 17 yards away from 1,000 on the year. So, barring anything catastrophic, he should get that in this game. Tennessee's been a much better throwing football team than a running football team, but still they ran for over 2,000 yards. And I think that this is going to be a game where, both teams are probably going to score. I don't have a whole lot of faith. I know Illinois' defense is better than Tennessee's, but I don't have a whole lot of faith in terms of.
I don't think I've gone on a show with anybody who can say that with a straight face.
Really?
Oh, yeah. This is going to be a battle of inept against inept, I think, when it comes to the defensive side.
Yeah, it's just, and we'll get into that more here in a moment, like what's been going on wrong for each defense. But I mean, it's just hard to have any faith in any defense, specifically I'm speaking for Tennessee right now. So I'm expecting a whole lot of points. I'm expecting a whole lot of fun for these offenses with Luke Altmyer and Joey Aguilar in the Music City Bowl for Tennessee and Illinois. We'll continue on. Little locked on crossover here on a Friday. We'll come back. We'll talk defense, bowl opt-outs, and we'll get our predictions as we continue on here on this Friday. Locked on Vols and Locked on Illini. There's nothing like college football season, the tailgates, the packed stadiums, and being right there in the middle of it all. We got one more. It's the bowl game. It's in Nashville. The energy, the bands, the moments that you're going to remember forever if you're in attendance. But actually getting tickets to these games, man, sometimes it can be more frustrating than the games themselves. Sitting in long queues, logins, prices jumping at checkout. That's why GameTime, it gives the advantage back to the fans. It's the easiest way to unlock amazing college football tickets and experiences in just a few taps. I open the GameTime app. I look for upcoming college football games and college basketball games as well. Look for Tennessee and was surprised to see how fast and great the seats were that were made available on the GameTime app. And it's not just sporting events as well. I'm looking for, seats at the Food City Center, Thompson Bowling Arena, and, Sonny, you're looking for basketball tickets all season long as well. But, baseball tickets for me in the spring, Smokies baseball downtown, minor league baseball. I mean, pretty much any event that could be a concert as well. You can find those tickets and prices and great seats on the GameTime app. And they got zone deals where you pick the section, GameTime picks the seats, and you save so much money. They got the best and most flexible customer service policy in all the ticketing industry. That is GameTime. We use it in our household. We encourage you to as well. It is easy. It takes the guesswork out of buying those tickets with GameTime. Download the GameTime app. Create an account, put in the redeem code Locked On College for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. That is Locked On College for $20 off. Download the GameTime app today and see what happens. You will not be disappointed. All right, we continue on here. Final segment on this Friday crossover, Locked On Vols and Locked On Illini. I'm Eric Cain alongside Sunny Verma and previewing the Music City Bowl. So we talked quarterbacks, let's talk defense. We touched on it there at the very end. Tennessee's defense at one point in time led the nation in sacks. I still think Tennessee's defense was top 10 in sacks. I think like number 6 or number 7. Not nearly as good at getting after the quarterback the last half of the season. Tennessee's one of the SEC leaders in takeaways. Tennessee finished number 2, I believe, in the country in defensive touchdowns with 6. Outside of that, man, that's where the line is. Defending the run, defending the pass, keeping points off the scoreboard, third down defense, red zone defense. It's all bad. And that's why, unfortunately, Tim Banks lost his job and Jim Knowles is coming in. And so just not a lot of good things to say about the Tennessee defense. That's why I think that there's going to be a whole lot of points in this game. Again, like some of the better, like Ty Rebbins, a true freshman. He's at one corner. He's gotten really good as the season was along. Colton Hood, the opposite corner. He's been really good. We'll see if he plays in this game. Kind of like you said earlier in the show, like not making excuses, adding context. Jamal McCoy is going to be a first-round pick. Cornerback didn't play at all this year. Hurt. A returning cornerback that started every game last year. played 19 snaps on the season, hurt, missed the whole year. Tennessee lost linebackers. Tennessee lost defensive tackles. So there were contributing factors, but at the end of the day, the Tennessee defense just was not very good. If it's not getting a takeaway or two and the offense isn't turning that into points, it's a long day for the Tennessee defense.
Yeah, this might not be a very long segment, Eric, because there's not much to talk about with the Illini defense as well. I think in the last game of the season, the cornerbacks finally got their second interception of the entire season. You're talking about, you had Xavier Scott, again, not excuses, context, who Xavier Scott was a player capable of being all Big Ten. He was our best defensive player, maybe aside from Gabe Jacas, who I'll talk about in a second. He went up to get an interception against Western Michigan when we were up, I think, 31-0 at the time, came down wrong, and all of a sudden limped off the field, and he was out for the year. So he ended up not playing, and so it was an every man up type of situation. The problem is this secondary just wasn't very good. They play a lot of bend, don't break. There's a lot of animosity towards Aaron Henry, the defensive coordinator. There's a lot of frustration with him because, again, the whole purpose of bending, not breaking, is to not break. But unfortunately, this defense, more often than not, would end up breaking. Gabe Jacas is a name I did want to mention. Again, he has some Tennessee ties in the sense where his recruiting process came down to Illinois and Tennessee, and ultimately he decided to come with Illinois, and we certainly are glad he did. He led the Big Ten in sacks. He had 11 sacks himself. He himself is a monster on the defense. He's more of an edge type of player, but he's opting out. He's going to be making a lot of money on Sundays moving forward, so that is a break for Tennessee in that sense. We're probably going to replace him with a lot of younger guys, just like and rotate it. You can't replace Gabe Jacas, at least not with the firepower that we have. So I think in his place, you're probably going to see 2 or 3 of the younger players rotate in and out. But quite honestly, when I was scouting up Tennessee and saw that you guys run 72 plays per game, that's the top 5, I think, in the country. This is going to be a track meet. I truly do believe that. The pressure is going to be on the Illinois, like Luke Altmyer and that offense, to be able to keep up with it, because I genuinely believe that every time Tennessee has the ball, they're going to put points up on the board.
Yeah, and I mean that's pretty typical. I mean, Tennessee's offense led the SEC in scoring, was the best. Yards per game was second to, I think it was Ole Miss. I mean, Tennessee's offense was good this year. Again, didn't run the football as well as it's ran it the previous 4 years, where they've rushed for over 2,500 yards, but still over 2,000 yards. Everything starts with a run, and you mentioned the plays per game. Yeah, I mean, Tennessee's actually slower now, but they still run tempo. And if you've never seen it, if you never watched it, certainly played against it, I mean, it smacks you in the face, and it takes a lot of times, for an opposing defense. Like, the SEC's used to it now, but like, it takes a little time for okay, let's get our bearings here, let's figure it out. Okay, that doesn't work, we can't do that. Let's, it takes a little while, and so I'm intrigued to kind of see what that looks like. Again, this is year 5 for Josh Heupel in this offense. There's not many teams that don't know what it is at this point, but whenever you do, this is the first time Tennessee and Illinois have ever met in a football matchup. I didn't know that until a couple of days ago. I was like, okay, well, surely they haven't met much. What's that overall record? I'm like, oh, this is the only time. So should be fun. That's coming up in Nashville on Tuesday. Let's touch on the opt-outs. You mentioned Gabe Jacas. He is not playing in this game. You're right. That's a massive win for Tennessee. Also, starting left tackle, right? He's not playing.
Yeah, J.C. Davis is also not going to be playing. He's also going to move forward with the NFL and start getting prepping for that. On the defensive side, we have Matthew Bailey, who's one of our star safeties. He hasn't decided what he's going to do with the NFL, but he just had surgery, and so unfortunately, he's going to be missing that game as well. You might have another couple names pop up between now and when the game actually happens, but for now, those are the 3 main guys who I think are notable to mention that Illinois is going to be lacking.
So, I mean, Jacas is huge, and J.C. Davis, which he was the first team All Big Ten, correct?
He is our best offensive lineman. He's a very talented a big boy, and he's a guy who we're very excited to bring back this past year. He was also in NFL draft talk last season, and then Brett Bielema literally flew to him. I think it was Christmas night or Christmas Eve or Christmas Day, and say, "Hey, can we get you back for 1 year?" He decided to come back. Had a solid, not super spectacular year, but he's going to be a big missing piece to an offensive line, which I've mentioned before here, has struggled all year long.
Yeah. On the Tennessee side, Jermon McCoy, who hasn't played in a game this season, he's going to be a first-round pick. He tore his ACL literally about, maybe a week or two after the playoff last year, and then just never got back into shape to play. Wide receiver Chris Brazzell, again, I mentioned him earlier, leading the SEC in yards and touchdowns. He is Tennessee's All-American wide receiver. He is not playing. Tennessee still got two other good ones, but Brazzell's a good one for sure, and he's definitely the deep threat. Linebacker Arion Carter, good player. Was slowed down a lot this year with double turf toe. I don't think this was a very good year for him, honestly. But he is a good player when healthy. He is not healthy. He is opting out, and he is going to the NFL. So those three players for sure. We'll see about a couple of other ones. I mean, I think one to watch would be Colton Hood. He's getting a lot of talk. Mel Kiper has him as his number 6 corner. ESPN has him as like a late first rounder, early second rounder. I think he's one to watch, and if he were to not play in this game, a bad secondary gets a whole lot worse. So that's something to look at right there. Joshua Josephs is another one that, we'll see if he plays in this game, but outside of those guys, I think that's pretty much all I can think of. I think it'll be a pretty good game. Should be a fun game. Our friends over FanDuel Sportsbook at the time of this recording has Tennessee as 2.5-point favorites. This is it's played in Nashville, right? I mean, there's going to be a ton of orange, Tennessee orange. It's weird. Tennessee started the season against Syracuse in a neutral site, orange and orange. Tennessee finishes the year against Illinois in orange and orange in the neutral site as well. But Tennessee's a 2.5-point favorite. That total is 61.5. Sonny, at the time of this recording, I know there's a couple days until the game. Kind of how do you think this game's going to play out? Do you have a score prediction?
I think it's going to be an interesting game for sure. I just think it's going to be such an offensive shootout. I trust your guys' offense a little bit more than ours. The spread, I believe, opened up at like 6.5 for Tennessee. So that spread has moved down pretty significantly. I'm assuming because of the opt-outs and, you guys making the coaching staff change on the defensive side. Ultimately, I hate making predictions, but the one I'll lock it down now. I think it's going to be offensive shootout, 37-31 Volunteers.
That's probably a safe bet in terms of the shootout aspect of it.
Yeah.
I'll pick Tennessee in this. I'll start off by saying I will not be shocked whatsoever, just because, again, there's been so many inconsistencies in the defense, and you have an interim defensive coordinator that's a linebackers coach right now. I don't think it's going to be any worse, but it's just not – there's been nothing consistent about Tennessee's defense, and offensively it's been really good, but sometimes when you're not running the football, man, it's a long day. I do think Tennessee will have success on the offensive end. I like the Volunteers in this one. I understand, your fan base is going to travel pretty well. They did in basketball, but still, it's a game in the state of Tennessee. It's a game in the nation's capital. There's going to be tons of Tennessee fans there. It's already sold out at Nissan Stadium. I like Tennessee to win in the shootout to cover the 2.5. I'll say Tennessee's winning by probably a touchdown. Give me 42-35 right now. Tennessee wins, and of course that would cover the over as well, as that totals at 61.5 according to our friends over at FanDuel. Should be fun. Looking forward to that. Of course, we'll both of our shows. That Wednesday show is going to be all about recapping and reviewing the Music City Bowl. Is it going to be Tennessee? Is it going to be Illinois? We'll find out. But for continual coverage leading up to kickoff, Tennessee fans, go check out Sonny. Go check out Locked On Illini. He'll have the scoop. He'll have the coverage for that side of this coin. And, of course, if you're looking to know any more information about Tennessee, come check us out at Locked On Vols. We'll have plenty of coverage from Nashville on Monday and Tuesday as well. Sonny, appreciate it, man. Had a blast, and we'll do this again soon. Maybe we'll do this again for basketball later on, all right?
Yeah, we got a season series pretty much every single year now. So, Eric, I appreciate the time and look forward to doing it again.
Sounds great. He is Sunny Verma. I'm Eric Cain, Locked On Vols, Locked On Illini, here on the Locked On Podcast Network.